All right, good morning and almost good afternoon, everybody. We are just going to get started in a couple of minutes, and we'll be launching a poll. So as you get situated, please feel free to ask any questions that you have. If you guys have been to our webinars before, they are extremely interactive, and you can use the questions tab or the chat tab to add any questions that you might have for our audience. And then we're going to be launching a poll very soon that will have some questions on there. Yep, the poll is up. And so our question today is about websites. So the question is, what website are you currently using? What website platform are you currently using? Are you using WordPress, Squarespace, Shopify, some other one, or you don't know? And it is perfectly okay to say you don't know. We'll give people a few more minutes. We'll wait for it to become noon Eastern or whatever time zone you are in. And we are seeing a flood of attendees entering. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As more people enter, we are just starting off with a quick poll. So please take a moment to vote in the poll. What website platform are you currently using? This will help our experts on the line maybe customize some of their comments to what we are actually dealing with on the phone. We'll get started in probably 1 or 2 more minutes. So good morning, everybody. We had a few more people join, so good morning. It's just turned good afternoon here on the East Coast. So hello, everybody. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. We are looking forward to a really good webinar here. For anybody that's been to our webinars before, they're highly interactive. So let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. All participants are on mute. All attendees are on mute. If you guys have any questions to ask, please use the questions tab. It should be on your display, or the chat tab. I'll be monitoring that throughout and managing all the questions for the team. As people get into the webinar, we are asking a poll question. So that should be up on your screen. What website platform do you currently use? And I'm looking at the results coming in. They're definitely interesting. We'll go ahead and get started in about 1 or 2 more minutes. I think we have a few more people we're waiting for. We have a good group joining so far. All right. Why don't we go ahead and show the poll results and just jump in? We got a great group here. Once again, I will welcome everybody to our webinar this afternoon. Great. So we have a whole big biased group of WordPress users and a bunch of people that don't know. And it doesn't look like anybody's on Squarespace or Shopify or some other platform. So it'll be interesting. We'll definitely have a good conversation about WordPress. And if you don't know, that's absolutely okay as well. Great, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Raj Kapoor. I'm the founder and managing director of AndMarketing. It's my privilege to welcome you guys today. Our webinar today is going to be about how to enhance your website experience to drive business results. So as AndMarketing, we do websites every single day, and we've done a ton of projects, especially over the last 4 or 5 months. We got a lot of requests to better understand what is our website process and how we go about it. So this webinar is intended just to talk a little bit about some of the best practices that we've learned along the way. As I said a moment ago, this is a highly interactive webinar. So please do leave questions in the questions tab. And if anybody could just send in a test question. So any question that you might have about websites, about marketing in general, or any aspect of driving business results through your website, please go ahead and leave those questions in the question tab. I'll be interrupting our experts throughout the conversation to get their perspective. We have a couple questions in there already. That's perfect. And you can always use the chat to communicate with me, and we'll go ahead and get started right now. So as a reminder, everybody who is an attendee is on mute only. You can certainly interact with the questions tab that should be on your screen and the chat window, and I'll be managing through that. It's my privilege to introduce Beth McDonough and Dex Burgess. So Beth McDonough is our content manager and copywriter for And Marketing and for many of our clients. She's a professional in storytelling and branding, and she's been at And Marketing for about 2 years. So good morning, good afternoon, Beth. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. Our second expert is our marketing manager, Dexter Burgess. Dex is our Swiss Army knife of many different skills, mostly on the technical side. So he gets involved in every single website project. He'll be talking a little bit more on the technical side of things. Dex has been with me since I started And Marketing, so probably about 3 years. Dex, how are you this morning?
Doing good. Hope everybody's well. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. So again, my name is Raj Kapoor. I'm the founder and managing director of And Marketing. Our contact information is there. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to us. But let's go ahead and dive in. So as we talk about the topic of enhancing your website experience for your visitors, we'll go through maybe 5 or 6 different things here. So first, we'll talk about the best platform for your business goals and needs, because a website is great, but in isolation, it's really difficult to plan for a website until you really know what your business goals are. So we always want to start with that fundamental. Second, we have a website framework, and we always base it on research and analysis. So what do visitors do? What do you want them to do? What's your competition doing? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Number 3, we'll talk about your brand's unique positioning and personality, because if that's not coming through on the website, then that's a major miss. So Beth will talk a little bit about that. Number 4, we'll talk about aligning your message with your customer's journey. So your customer goes through a journey that's both offline and online, and aligning your messaging with that customer journey is a critical component. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the importance of modern visuals that match your brand's identity and how to come up with that identity. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the really important parts that it is alarming on how many of these people miss. But we'll talk about building the website, ensuring the functionality, and tracking performance on an ongoing basis. So that's the expectation here. I would love it if anybody else has any questions or anything else that you wanted to get out of this. If you want to go ahead and ask a question about it, now would be a great time to jump in the questions tab and go ahead and put that question in there. With that, I'll hand it over to Dex to get started.
Thanks, Raj. I appreciate it. So welcome, everybody. The first topic, like Raj mentioned, is to select the best platform for your business goals and needs. And so most often, when you start, you definitely want to ask yourself, what are your business goals? Now, when you're aligning that to your website strategy, we frequently find that that's either, you're selling products, you're offering information or help on your services, or you can even have it as a simple brochure online. Depending on that business objective, though, that's really what's going to lock down what platform you should choose, because the platform is definitely going to offer the functionality and flexibility you need to do one of those things. So with the question of what platform should I build on, we've offered a few more mainstream platforms. There's images on the slides, and I'll kind of talk about all 3, or I guess all 5, but 3 different buckets essentially of kind of website builders that we see today. So with platforms like Squarespace is on the far left, and this also kind of includes Wix and Webflow. These platforms are out-of-the-box templates, so you can go in, you can sign up for a package and get started pretty quickly. They do allow for some flexibility within, adding functionality for emails or adding functionality for Calendly, but mainly it's out of the box, and you're going to kind of get what the template gives you. The other nice thing with Squarespace is that you do have backups enabled with them. So if your website ever goes down, you don't have to worry about that much, because you can go right to the team at Squarespace and they'll help you out. Now, when we get into bigger website builders such as WordPress, which I saw that a lot of people have, It's a lot more complex, but that comes with the good part of being very, very flexible and very, very customizable. So there are a lot of themes, there are a lot of functionalities, and you can even dive right into the code and make core changes yourself. So it's pretty nifty and quick that way. However, you will need a web developer if you do choose WordPress. With backups and with maintaining the website, you do need a little bit more of an eye because you are in charge of doing that yourself. But it's still a great option. And so last, I have Shopify, and this is more specific to e-commerce or selling products. And there's many platforms to do so, but Shopify is in the sense of Squarespace, where it's out of the box. You can get your products established up and quickly, and have a template that kind of matches your brand without having to do a whole bunch of design work on the back end. Additionally, you do not have to worry about as many backups and updates because Shopify handles that for you. So there are kind of 3 different options to choose from, and it really depends on what you want to do with your website in terms of what you should choose. So we've selected our website platform. That's great. Now we need to establish the framework of the website on some research and analysis.
So Dex, I'm sorry, I know you want to go to the next page. We do have a question here. So one of the questions that came in is, how often do I actually need to redo my website? Can you address that?
Yeah, great question. So first off, it depends on what you define as redo. If you're looking to completely redo your site, we do recommend that every 3 to 5 years. Usually at that point, you're looking at some outdated design or outdated functionality in some way, as software tends to go about itself. But if you're looking to just redo maybe a home page or some of the services pages, we recommend looking at that every 6 months to a year. Some things can change. SEO has taken a bit to establish itself, and that way you can decide on which direction you want to go.
Yeah, it's great. We got another question in here about the difference between Squarespace and WordPress. And it's funny, I get this question all the time when we're going through WordPress projects or website projects, excuse me. So WordPress is extremely popular for very good reasons. As Dexter said, it's infinitely scalable. So you can practically build any website or any functionality or any integration you want with WordPress. We work with a lot of small and mid-sized companies. So what we find is people think that they need WordPress, but they actually are okay with one of the simpler formats. And the question here is, will being on Squarespace or Wix affect my SEO? So it's a reasonably technical question, but what we have found overall is the answer to that is no. There is a lot of information out there that would make it seem like the only way you can really succeed on SEO is through WordPress. But our own website for our own company was on Squarespace very successfully for at least the first 2 years of our business. We've increased our functionality needs, so we've moved to WordPress. But I would say for a majority of small businesses that we work with, when they don't have that much content, they don't have any integrations, they don't have any of that type of things, they're going to be just fine with Squarespace. And I estimate it takes about half as long to complete a really good looking Squarespace site. Has all the functionality that most businesses need, and it works pretty well out of the box, as Dexter said, and there's no discernible negative impact on SEO. So just to answer that question discreetly, I thought this would be a good moment to do that. Anything else to add to that, Dex?
No, great points all around.
Great, let's keep moving on.
So when you're establishing the framework of your website, you definitely want to do your research. In the case of this webinar, I decided to break it down into 3 different areas to make it a little bit easier to understand. So the 3 areas that I have to research are your customer's journey, your company's jargon, and your competitors. So the customer journey is an important part. How do you get people to your website? How do they interact with your website upon first visiting? Without going into too much detail about your brand story, there are different ways to get people there, and understanding that customer journey will help you establish the framework and structure of your website to keep people on your website and then navigate them to the pages that they actually want to see. Next is the jargon. I like this one because each company, each industry has a list of buzzwords that are thrown around in meetings or in everyday work. But oddly enough, these same keywords are often what are searched on Google by prospects to find you and your competitors. So fortunately, there are ways to target these keywords. That's SEO. And there's a lot of things that you can do on the back end to help draw that traffic. But as you do SEO and you do that study, you'll actually know what to put on your website pages so you can start to gather that traffic. And last is your competitors. So this may seem pretty standard, but basically going to check out your competitors and see what functionality they have. In some cases, you might find that they have an outdated website, which is good for you. But in some cases, they may have an extremely updated site with high-ranking blog posts or even some specific functionality that helps their visitors interact with their business in a new, unique way. So if you can go out and do that research, you'll be able to make some better choices on, how you want to structure your content, your design, and maybe how you want to interact with the people on your website. So after you do all that homework, you'll be left with a lot of information on how to build it. And with that, I'll let Beth take it over and tell you how to build your brand story.
Actually, Dex, we got a question before we hand it over to Beth. So it's a question about customer journey. The question is, how do I know my customer's journey? If I don't, the question is, how do I know what my customer's journey is? So I think this is a research question. I'm happy to start. Maybe Dex, you can address it. So a customer's journey is both online and offline. So when we say a customer's journey, that is from the moment that they have some sort of a problem to the moment that they go find solutions to that problem, decide upon a provider, whether that's a product or a service or whatever, and then actually go through and make the transaction or the purchase. We consider that the customer's journey. So if you don't know your customer's journey, that is a more fundamental question. You should not already be building your website if you don't know your customer's journey. And I would encourage you to take a step back, really understand what your prospects go through before they go to the web or do things like that, because there's a lot of things that could potentially happen offline. What do they do online? Do they go to Google? Do they go directly to your website? Do they highlight competitors? Do they go to social media? Like, what do they do? What happens once they get to your site? And then what happens once they leave your site or go somewhere else? I really encourage you to do that piece of work before you jump in and do a website project. What I find is for people and clients that don't know this, we have to spend a lot of time doing some research and understanding that before we can just jump in and grab the keyboard. So I don't know, Beth or Dex, if you have any follow-ups on that customer journey question.
I'll just go ahead and say it's very important to document as much as possible. What will end up happening is, especially as the website goes live, people will come in via different acquisition channels and interact and engage with the website, and that'll end up how you end up tracking and reporting on those actual customer journeys and seeing if they're viable.
Yeah, I think metrics are super important. So there's a perfect question that's a follow-up to that, Dex, we just got in. So how do I measure success with my website?
Awesome. I'll talk about that a little bit later within my last point, but to answer briefly, measuring your success starts with your business objectives. If you're e-commerce, revenue will probably be your first way to measure success. But if you're not e-commerce, there's a bunch of different ways that you can measure success on the website. Without going into too much detail, you can set up goals within Google Analytics, and those track actions that are taken across your site. And as you track those actions, you'll be able to see what acquisition channels are driving engagement, or what certain geographic are driving that engagement as well.
Yeah, it's a great answer, Dex. The only part I would add is really avoid vanity metrics. When Dex said that you need to align with your business goals first, I think that's super important. Quite often we see vanity metrics such as awareness or clicks or all these types of metrics that don't really correlate to growing your business, whether that's lead generation, e-commerce, or something else. We always like to measure our website success as close to the point of purchase as we possibly can. And that certainly varies by business, what industry you're in, or if you're B2B or B2C. But quite often getting clicks or something like that is as easy as turning on advertising or turning off advertising. You can skyrocket your clicks, make those metrics look really good for some reason, but they don't in any way correlate to sales. So I would always encourage you to build metrics that are as close to sales as possible, because that's how you kind of drive the right behaviors.
Definitely.
Awesome. Beth, I think you're next.
Yes. So now that you've nailed down the technical aspects and hopefully you have your customer journey all lined up, it's time to figure out how to actually convey this information on your website. So step one for that is going to be defining your brand's unique positioning and their personality. And so when we say customer journey, that's also translated on our end as the quintessential hero's journey, like you see in epic films such as Star Wars or Indiana Jones or Lord of the Rings. And we apply that to websites and the customer journey because your customer is your hero. So we combine we merge two strategies. A lot of agencies or marketing teams use one or the other. We put them both together, and the one is Adapting the Story Brand Framework by Donald Miller. And then the other one is Determining Your Brand Personality through the 12 Major Archetypes. And the reason we use both is because it's not only about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it that's going to draw your customer in. So if you see these two graphics at the bottom of the slide, the one on the left is The Hero's Journey from the Story Brand book from Donald Miller. And you're starting with a character, and that's your hero. This is the biggest pivot that brands often need to make in their own minds, because sometimes we present ourselves as the hero. And when you do that, you actually set yourself up as a competitor to your customer. Because when you think about when you're shopping for something as a customer, or when you're looking for a service, you want to be the most important person. So some kind of brands who do this really, really well, if you look at a lot of products who are appealing to parents, so sometimes like diaper companies or cleaning products. I saw a commercial for a grill or a barbecue sauce the other day that's all about like empowering the dad or empowering the mom, or a lot of food companies will do this, because it's not about how it's not about all the bells and whistles of the product. It's about how the product's going to empower the person who's using it. So this barbecue sauce might taste really, really good, and it might have all these awesome flavors in it, but how does it help dad? And so when you set yourself up to make your customer the hero and adjust your mindset, then everything else sort of falls into place, because it's all about their needs. And so when you make that pivot and make your customer your hero, you become their guide. And that's when we work in the brand personality aspect of this, because you have to figure out what kind of guide you want to be. How does your audience want to hear from you? What kind of language do they want you to use? You want to build trust and authority through speaking to them. So on the right side, you'll see this wheel, and you might have seen some versions of this before. These are the 12 brand archetypes, and we have them color-coded a little bit based on the audience's core desire. But when you nail down which archetype your brand falls into, and this is another way we do it a little bit differently. We use a primary and a secondary, because it's usually not all or nothing. And usually, depending on where you are in, say, the sales funnel, your homepage might want to focus more on your primary. And maybe when you're emailing them, because you've gone from awareness to consideration and you're nurturing them through that email, maybe you're using your secondary a little bit, because you've kind of like hooked them in, and now you're nurturing that relationship. So it's all about how you want to identify your customers' needs. So that's your hero. How you're positioning yourself to help them instead of competing against them. And then nailing down the foundations of your brand's personality. So does your customer want to see someone who's funny? Do they want to see someone who comes off as really wise, personable and relatable, empathetic, or authoritative? What are they going to relate to? A lot of what works really well can be, people refer to it as mirror marketing sometimes. So your customer wants to, they're looking to see someone who's ahead of them on the same journey, right? If you look at Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi he used to be a Jedi. And so Luke looks up to him because he's been there and he's walked the same path. So mirror marketing can be effective in that way, because you're talking to someone and you're able to say, like, I've been there, I know what it's like, I've done this before, so you can trust me because I have the experience to help you get here. That was a whole lot of information, so I'm sure there are questions.
No, it's phenomenal, and we do have a couple questions. So we had a question about determining a brand's personality. I think you just answered that one. The other question is, I have a very well-developed technology. How do I understand better how it aligns to my customers' problems? So I think I got that whole question. I'm trying to paraphrase a little bit. So I think aligning to your customer's problem versus leading with your solution is fundamental to the framework that Beth described first. So if you don't understand who the individual is that you're trying to convince to do something different, and you're immediately jumping in with your technology solution, we do a lot of work in the food industry. So you might have a really great new food product or something. We do a lot of work in B2B as well with technology. Quite often our clients will come to us with a solution in search of a problem. And the most important fundamental is that you flip it. And I hate to be repetitive to the customer journey answer earlier, but it really does go back to the fundamental of understanding their problems first. and then mapping your solution as the way for them to resolve that versus any of their other better alternatives. So I don't know, Beth, if you have anything to add to that, but there's really a question about how do I better understand what my customer's problem is so I can map my solution to it.
Yeah, and Dex talked about this a little bit, and I think he's going to say some more later when he goes into kind of Google Analytics and SEO. But a really effective way to do that is to dig into what people are looking for on Google, right? People type questions into Google. How do I clean hardwood floors? Or how do I protect my computer against cyber attacks? Like those are when you see that people are looking for those questions, that's the problem that they have that you can help them solve. And so those questions are usually going to solve the problem right away for you. And you can also look at, when you're doing competitor research, what problems do you see that your competitors are helping to solve? And can you solve those same problems, and how are you doing it differently? And we go a little bit deeper into the customer journey because you have the kind of external facing problem. And when we take our clients through the framework, we get really deep into what wakes them up in the middle of the night, or what are they afraid of? Kind of the more of the internal, the emotional aspect of that problem. So you can really like exacerbate helping them feel like you can connect with them on the solution.
Yep, that's great. That's great. Beth, you just had another question coming a few minutes ago. So it's, what are the most effective CTAs, which is a call to action, for grabbing potential new clients or customers? I think you're going to address that on the next page, or do you want to handle that one now? Again, what are the most effective CTAs, which is a call to action, for grabbing potential clients and customers?
Yeah, I'll take it on the next slide because I'm actually going to walk through. You're going to get kind of our secret sauce of the flow of the homepage and tell you exactly where some of that stuff should go. So once you have your kind of framework laid out for who your hero is, how you should be talking to them, you want to figure out how to get all that information on your website and put it in the right places. So we say a lot that there's certain information that has to go top of the fold. And what the top of the fold is that Dex can probably explain it much better than I can, but it's that very first thing you see on your computer screen before you have to scroll. So that's going to be your header, your tagline, that very first section of copy. And you want that to immediately tell people who you are and what you do. I used to be a big proponent of using like a catchy tagline or something that sounds cool, like we innovate XYZ, and that doesn't make it clear right away what someone actually does. And so rather than try to be clever at the top of your website, just be very, very clear. As you can see that stat at the bottom, the average attention span has fallen from 20 seconds to 8 seconds. 8 seconds is the attention span of a goldfish. So when someone is going to a website, they literally have the attention span of a goldfish. So you want to tell them exactly how you're serving them immediately. And then your homepage needs to provide a super clear explanation of how you're helping solve that problem. So the way that your homepage should be laid out is the top is going to be an intro. If you look at our website right now, we just finished redoing it recently. It tells you right away, your outsourced marketing department. It's exactly who we are. So they could go no further in that journey and they know exactly what our service is. And then right underneath that, you need to give them an immediate way to work with you. Imagine if you are walking around a department store and you have a cartload full of stuff and you want to pay for it and leave and you can't find the register. So you're like, I'm ready to give you money and I would like to take my things, but I can't figure out how to actually buy it from you. So a primary call to action, like Raj mentioned before, which is an immediate, like, I want the service, I want a consultation, I want to work with you, make that available right at the top, because if some people have made that decision that early, you want them to be able to know how to work with you immediately. And then we talked about the problem and the solution. So underneath that header, you're going to immediately establish the problem. And people need to have their problem exacerbated a little bit. So like pick off the scam kind of when you establish the problem, because if you're not in physical pain in that very moment, you're not going to go seek help. So you have to remind them what they're experiencing and what that frustration is like, so they can remember it in the moment that they need help with that problem. And then just under that, you're going to give them the solution. And so once you've set them up, like, here's what you're experiencing, here's how we can help, you need to give them a reason to trust you as their guide, like we just mentioned before. So that's where you're going to line out how they can trust you through your authority. So that could be certifications you have, that could be awards you've won, that could be conferences you've participated in, whatever that may be. And then they're going to trust you through empathy. So that's where you want to say, I understand because I used to be a single mom, or my computer got hacked, or whatever that may be, so that they can trust that you've been through what they've been through and you understand their struggles. And then at the bottom, you want to define the clear steps that they need to take to work with you. Try really, really hard not to make it more than 3, because if it looks too complex, then they're going to abandon ship. So even if your process is technically like 7 or 8 steps, see how you can condense it down into step 1, step 2, step 3. And then at the bottom, you're going to give them a primary and a secondary call to action. So think about if you're dating somebody and you get through the whole website, or you meet them for the first time and they immediately ask you to marry them. And you like them, but you're not really sure you want to go that far yet. And so the marry me is let's work together. So that might be your buy button or your schedule a call button. And if they're not ready for that, you want to give them another option, because if you don't and they're not ready to take that full step, they might leave and not come back. So your secondary or transitional call to action is asking them out on a second date. That's going to be offering them something for free, like an ebook or a checklist. And then trying to get their sign up for your email so that you can then date them, because that's how you're going to nurture them through, is sending them emails, staying in contact with them, and then asking them to date you and asking them to marry you again, maybe after you talk to them a couple more times.
Yeah, so Beth, let me just, perfect answer. What I'll do is I'll just put that in the frame of the question that we got a moment ago. So what are the most effective CTAs for grabbing potential new clients and customers? I would say every business should decide what their primary CTA is, or maybe a couple of primary CTAs. Those are big asks. So in Beth's analogy, it's will you marry me? This is a big ask. Always make that available, because if somebody is searching for a problem, you want to be the obvious solution. And quite often we find people being too subtle about it. So you really have to make it easy to buy. I think the real challenge is, what are the most effective secondary calls to action? What are the things you can do that says, let's go on a date? So I don't know what the date is in this person's industry, because I'm not sure what industry they're in, but something that is a valuable piece of information. It could be a sample if it's a tangible product. It could be a, some sort of a whittled down version of what that major ask is. And I think trying multiple secondary calls to action, and then actually testing and measuring which one goes better, which one goes differently. What I might also add is, when you segment your customers and you have different customer audiences, they might actually have different calls to action that might work for them. So I really advocate for experimenting quite a bit. So once you build the website, you can build multiple versions. You can actually test one against the other pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I would, sometimes a call to action that says like learn more or read more is unavoidable, but if you can make it something that's more compelling and more specific, like, protect your computer or download the ebook, if it's something where it tells them what the specific action is that they're going to next, instead of just read more or learn more, then more people are likely to click on it and go to the next step.
Yeah, one of the ones, just in a consumer example, just to balance it a little bit, because we have a lot of consumer clients, one of the consumer calls to action could be follow us on social media. So social media is obviously very popular for B2B and B2C, but if you actually have some visuals of what your social media looks like, the person might come, they may not be ready to buy that e-commerce transaction, but they may want to go to social media, learn a little bit more. So there's a few examples for the person who asked this question. So Beth, I got one more question on this page, and then another question to go back a page. So how do I get more people to spend more time on my website? I think you addressed that a little bit, but I think the goldfish example, the 8-second thing you said struck a chord in this person's question.
Yeah, and there's another stat at the bottom that says the average time on a website is less than 10 to 15 seconds. So a lot of it is about, I hate to use like the fishing analogy, like you're baiting the hook, but you want to give them enough right up front to keep them wanting more, and then tell them where to go next. And so that's where the like streamline other content on your website is really important, because you have to give them the exact information that they want at face value. I know we have that content ebook that's called Cut the Fluff. And because it is all about, fluff is really fun, and I'm a storyteller, so I'm a huge proponent of fluff, but when you are on a website, like people go on a website because they're looking for a solution to their problem. So give them the solution right away, and then take them step by step exactly where they need to go to get the information they want.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, I'm going to go back and answer a question from the previous pages really quickly. And so this question was, it's just a repeat, Beth, and I think I'll take it unless you have something to add here. So the question was, I'm familiar with StoryBrand, but would you mind repeating where the wheel graphic comes from? So just to paraphrase what Beth said a moment ago, this is for the graphic on the left is about telling the story. That's through the StoryBrand framework, which we use. The one on the right is about brand personality. So there's something in human psychology called the 12 personalities, and that's been adapted to marketing to become the 12 brand personas or brand archetypes. So that's where we borrow that framework, and we help our clients kind of align to their primary voice and their secondary voice. So one is about what you say, the second is the tonality or the voice that you use. Beth, anything to add there to that question?
Yeah, and if you Google 12 brand archetypes, you're going to see lots of different versions of this wheel. This is actually ours that we created, and so it's unique because in the center, it's color coded by sort of the core desires that an audience has, which are stability, transformation, belonging, and independence. And from there, we sort of ask you questions to guide you into figuring out what your primary and secondary are. For example, we have a client right now who is primary is ruler and secondary is everyman. So that means in the beginning, their customer wants a lot of authority to build that trust. They want to know that that their guide understands what the protocols are, what they need to do next. And then once they become a customer or once they become nurtured through emails, then they want to be everyman because they're in the club. So they want to be talked to with more casual language, more like an insider. So that's how we use primary and secondary to balance out the messaging.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Thanks, Beth. All right, modern visuals.
So once you have all of the words that you want to use on your website, step 2 is to align the visuals to streamline and be cohesive with those words. So you want to create a brand aesthetic that matches the story you're telling with words. The decisions that you want to make here revolve around consistency. So do you want to rely on illustrations? Do you want graphics? Do you want stock photos? Do you want real life photos of people working with your business? You're going to work in your brand archetype, your brand persona with that to figure out what visual elements your customers are looking for and what's going to appeal to them. If you use illustrations, but your customer is very serious and you're more of like a sage, then that might not appeal to them. So you want to establish consistency for quick and compelling brand awareness. You want to make your brand recognizable. So whether it's on your website, on social media, on like a physical printed collateral, the colors, the typography, the style of photo editing, if you want to make it so consistent so somebody sees something of yours, before they even see your logo or your brand name, they know it's yours. 95% of purchase decision making takes place in the subconscious mind. That's why story is so important, and visual elements are part of that story. So you want it all to be aligned so that people, those wires in people's brains can start to associate some consistency with that. Consistent presentation of a brand increases revenue by 23%. So the more likely they are to know who you are and recognize you and understand what you're all about, the more likely they are to want to build a relationship with you.
That's great. We have a question here about that last bullet here. So it says, people across my company, including the sales team and the marketing team, online and offline, all have different representations of what my brand looks like. What would you suggest? I'll grab the question first. Beth, you're welcome to fill in. I mean, this is the hard thing we deal with a lot, especially with companies that are growing quickly or companies that are in multiple geographies. It is really important to drive one consistent brand. And we don't just mean the visual aspect, although I think that's the question, but it's the brand, it's the tonality, it's the usage, really driving consistency. And I hate to use the word police, but sometimes you have to police it. So if there's inconsistent brand use, you don't have the same PowerPoint, for example, or you have your collateral doesn't match your website, it is only going to cause confusion. We get the question all the time when brands that don't have this alignment, is it actually the same company that I'm seeing on paper that I'm seeing online? So I think really driving that consistency from the top of the organization all the way down is super critical. Beth, anything you would add to that?
I would just add, when it comes to words and that kind of messaging, Dex mentioned company jargon in the beginning, and while that's equally important when it's recognizable jargon that customers are actually looking for. If you're using jargon that's like insider jargon that no one else is going to understand but you, that's something else that you can streamline and put in like a style guide or a brand guide or a value prop that says, don't use this word, use this word, and so that they understand, like, this is the customer facing word, this is what they'll understand. We always pass, you know, our messaging around our team, and it says, we tell each other, like, put your mindset into someone who's not, you know, doing Google ads every day, and what would they know what that word means, and what word should we actually use? So if you can lay that clearly out, even in like a chart, or, you know, when you were in high school and you wrote those essays and your teacher would probably like circle a sentence and say, like, you can say this in 3 words instead of 12. So it's really taking a close look at streamlined messaging that's going to make sense outward facing when something different might be inward facing.
Yeah, so well said. We have in our industry, in the marketing industry, we are polluted by terrible jargon. And I'm convinced that most people in the marketing industry use jargon to make themselves sound and feel smart, but it actually extremely off-putting because so much of our industry is helping people with technology. And if you use jargon as a barrier, it just ends up making things very confusing. So we try to eliminate jargon whenever possible. And I think that's well said, Beth. Great, perfect, we'll move on. Dex, I think this one's yours.
Yeah, no, thank you, Beth. That's really great information. So after you have your concept, what you really want to do is just build the website, right? This can take a few amount of weeks, depending on how much information you have, but it's the next step, right? So you build your website. And one thing that you want to do before taking it live is definitely test it. There's a lot of different functionality on the website. For example, if you have a contact form, test it. Make sure that that information is submitting. Make sure that your users have a good experience after the contact form. Maybe that's a follow-up email. And if you have a CRM, make sure that that contact information is actually getting into your CRM so that you don't have to manually do tasks to make sure that information is crossed over. And from there, really, you want to integrate Google Analytics and Google Search Console. So I have both of those logos put up there. Google Analytics is going to be your tool to really measure how your website success is doing. And Google Search Console is an integration to Google Analytics that allows you to see all of those organic SEO keywords that people are searching to get to your site. So it's a 2-part setup, but it's very, very important because this will tell you what you need to do in the future. If you ever are concerned about how your website's performing and what recommendations, Google Analytics is probably going to be your first place to go and check how things are going. And it's important to mention, so after you get those Google Analytics and Search Console set up, take your website public. But it's important to remember that there's some maintenance that may come afterwards. And so, like I said, with WordPress, you'll probably want to check about every month for updates. So your plugins that you use, this could be plugins to connect with Google Analytics. This could be plugins to optimize images. Those plugins need to be checked, and they need to be checked against your WordPress build as well. If you can do that once a month, you'll be safe, and you won't have to back up as much as you need to. For Squarespace and such, you won't have to worry about backing up at all or even doing updates, which is really nice. So your website's live. Great.
Perfect, Dex. We got two questions that just came in. So and they're tied together, so you can feel free to answer them together. So why is SEO important to my website? And then how do I get my website to rank on Google? So you want to maybe take those together?
Yeah. So SEO is important for one pretty main reason, in my opinion. It's free organic traffic. So this is an opportunity for your website to generate traffic from people that search on Google or other search engines without you spending much time distributing or producing content at all. It starts with getting the analytics and Search Console set up, and from there, it starts working itself. So it's important because it's free. You don't have to do much for it, and it's after a year or two, there's a really good chance that you can start getting a lot of traffic. So how do you get your website to rank on Google? You'll definitely want to connect with Search Console. Search Console has a way for you to index your website so that Google can automatically go start crawling it and see all the pages, all the links that you have on the website. And from there, it'll start ranking. So Google will start to look at your pages and say, okay, well, if you are promoting a keyword such as software as a service, then we're going to start ranking you for that keyword. There's a lot of related keywords in different ways that you can find what people are searching based on what Beth said earlier. But on top of that, on how to get your website to rank, There's also a bunch of smaller things that you can do. So updating your page titles and your page descriptions, getting backlinks on your site, and publishing regular content will help generate SEO over time. What I like to say is SEO is definitely a long game. So if you do the work now, you may not see any results in 3 months, but you will probably start seeing results after 6 months to a year, and it's only gonna increase from there.
Yeah, let me just add in a comment, and there's a question. So Dex, let's go to the question first because it relates it. So you explained Search Console a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what it is and why is it important again? So Search Console, you said, allows Google to search your website more easily. Talk a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, of course. So Search Console, there's a few steps that you have to set it up. And one is just adding a little link on your website. But what that does is it allows Google a direct connection to your website, and it allows it to actually crawl it. And so what I mean by crawl it is a little, what they call a spider, comes along to your website page and it goes down all of the code. And as it goes down the code, it looks at other links that go off the page. It looks at the keywords that you have on the page, and it looks at your images. And based on what it sees, it decides to rank your pages based on that and based on the keywords that you're trying to target. So the Search Console is the way then that allows you to see what those keywords are that people are searching. So if you don't have Search Console set up, there's a good chance you'll never know that, you know, a prospect search software as a service to get to your site. But if you have Search Console set up, you'll be able to see that insight into that keyword, and not only that keyword, but then how it relates down through the rest of your engagement.
So we do website analyses all the time, and this isn't just for small companies, even mid-size or mid-market companies. I am shocked at how many companies don't have Google Analytics and Search Console set up. It only takes a few minutes. You need a capable marketing person or a capable IT type person to set it up and ensure that it's working correctly. And it is so fundamental to your monthly reporting. One of the items in our checklist that we'll share next, but is literally the same breath, is the ability to create a monthly report so you're tracking all of your metrics on a consistent basis. It is so easy to do, and so few people actually do it. So I really encourage these two as sort of the base level, and then you can get more advanced from that. But I really encourage you guys, if you don't have Google Analytics or Google Search Console installed, get it installed. And if you don't know if you have it installed, shoot us a quick note and we'll set it up for you. It is literally just a few minutes of activity, and we're happy to do that for anybody who's on this webinar. That is a no-brainer. Awesome. So great, Dex, that was all the questions here. I think we'll move on. And yeah, so speaking of the Go Live checklist, so if you get the download for this webinar, which was put in the chat, you can get our Go Live checklist as a PDF. These are all the checklist questions, many of which Beth and Dex just went all the way through. It's all about the messaging. It's all about the technical aspects. It's linking it to social media. It's doing all of those types of things. We would highly recommend that you have this Go Live checklist whenever you're working on a website project. So that download is available inside this PDF. And I'll do a very last call for any more questions. I don't see any more questions. Looking here, and I think we answered all of them. So I'll go through the next steps, and then Beth and Dex, if you guys have anything else to add, I'd love to hear from you guys. So everybody is going to be receiving a post-webinar survey. So number one, please take a moment to provide us with feedback on today's webinar. What did you like? What could we do better? We do these for you guys, and so we're glad to get so much attendance and so much engagement. Inside it, there is a specific invite for a pilot that we are running right now. I'll spend a minute talking about it. But it's a 7-week educational program pilot specifically designed for solopreneurs and one-person marketing departments. So these are for smaller businesses or single-person businesses that don't have a ton of marketing resources. We are doing a 7-week educational pilot that launches at the end of this month. That's going to provide educational materials, access to awesome coaches and experts like Dexter and Beth, a community of like-minded professionals who are going through the similar journey. The modules that we'll go through on each subsequent week are listed on the right. So how to do business strategy, how to do brand messaging, how to do content marketing, all the things you can see over there on the right. And what we're asking for in exchange for participation in our pilot, we're going to give a steep discount, and we're going to do that in exchange for ongoing feedback. So inside this survey that you guys are going to receive after this webinar is a request if you want more information. So if you are a solopreneur or a one-person marketing department or know of one, please feel free to put your information in there, and we'll be reaching out to you in the next week or so with more information there. So I don't see any more questions. I'll just ask Beth and Dex, anything else you guys like to add or any more comments you'd like to make?
Don't get overwhelmed. It's a difficult process. There's a lot of decisions, but it takes time, and you'll get there.
Perfect. Thanks, Dex. Beth, anything else from you?
No, I like it what Dex said. This process can feel, I think, the most overwhelming. So just take it one step at a time and don't skip things along the way. So that's where the checklist is going to really come in handy, because we put it in the order that you should be going by too. So good luck, and we're happy to help.
Thanks so much, Beth. Thanks so much, Dex. We appreciate your time very much. Again, my name is Raj Kapoor. You're going to be receiving a feedback survey. If you have any questions or have any comments for us, we would appreciate if you fill that out, and we look forward to hearing back from you. Awesome. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.